I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. Hello, my friends. I am here with my friend Jenna. Hey, Jenna, thanks for being a part of this.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
You are most welcome. I think your story is super exciting, and I'm glad that you're willing to tell it here because I've had little snippets of it over the years, and I'm excited to hear what you want to share. So we go back, I don't even know, because we both worked at the same company, but we never worked there together.
Right, exactly. That's what I was just going to say. Like, I feel like my internship started and then you left. And then we've just like crossed paths. We went to Joe's wedding and then we crossed paths. And then you've supported and followed us, and I followed your journey. And thank goodness for social media to just
Right?
like keep these people that were destined to be in each other's lives together.
It's so crazy. And honestly, in a lot of these conversations, we've started out the conversation talking about social media because when it's used right, it's so
Mm,
valuable, right?
so
And
valuable.
so many of these people that I've been fortunate enough to talk to and share their story, we're connected because of social media. And it's not like we talk on a regular basis or any of those things, but we know what's happening. We know we can check in at any moment and it's welcomed. It's really cool. So that's kind of how our friendship exists, really. Because I mean, I think the last time we saw each other was at that wedding.
Yeah, which was 12, 10,
No
I
idea.
don't know, 15 years ago. Literally no clue what year it was.
Concept of
I
time
judge everything.
is gone.
It's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. You probably have mile
Oh,
markers based on your children's ages.
I was just going to say the only beacons I have are my children's ages. And sometimes that even is blurry. Like we're finally at 2 years old with Tegan, and it's like, okay, I don't have to say she's 18 months or 14 months or whatever, right? Because now I have another year here.
Sorry, we're not
It's
measuring
true.
we're not measuring in small increments anymore. It's just a full 12
Right.
months at a time.
Yeah. I never understood that until I was a parent. And now I'm like, there's a difference between a 14-month-old and a 16-month-old. Legit. Like, it's the craziest thing. Oh my gosh.
Well, as I said before, I think that your journey and all you have multiple, I feel like you have multiple pivot points
Yeah.
with a couple major life shifts. And so typically what I ask my guests to do is kind of share what life was like for you or what you were doing or who you were or what you were feeling or any of those kind of like background pieces so that we can get an understanding of kind of that shift when you talk about that. So can you fill us in on the little background of you?
I went to college. I got a degree in mechanical engineering, and then with the sole purpose of making a lot of money. Like that was my goal in life. I didn't have, I didn't want to save the world or save children or any of those things. Like it was to make money, very selfish. And so,
To be fair, that's what most of us were conditioned to do.
right. Yeah. So I got a job in Washington State, moved from Florida immediately. I couldn't wait to leave Florida. I was never meant for the warmth and the humidity and the heat. I fell in love with Washington the moment I got off the airplane. It was December, it was snowing, it was cold. I was like, I'm here. I have arrived. So, I got a job with the Boeing company and spent the next 10 years working there. Met my now husband there, and yeah, I mean, I did it. I reached the goal. I made a lot of money. I had a lot of disposable income. We could do whatever we wanted. He obviously also worked at Boeing, so yeah, we made it, right? We had arrived at that goal in life,
Right.
and it wasn't fulfilling. I would sit at my desk, and I always want to like make sure that I preface with these corporate companies have a lot of different places you can go with your job roles. Like I chose to stay in the job that I was in because I didn't have a desire to seek anything outside of that. I had already made up my mind. Like, the
Yeah.
corporate world's not for me. I don't need to go into management. I don't need to change I loved the group that I worked in. They were amazing. And it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, this isn't for me. I remember my manager at the time, I think he was, I don't know, maybe I was just a couple years in and he came into our group to give somebody their 5-year like pin. He's like, "What do you think, Jenna? You think you're a lifer?" And I'm like, "No." Like, we had very candid conversations. Everybody knew, in our group, we all kind of knew each other's business and hobbies and things that really made us excited. And so I said, "No, I'll be lucky if I make it to 5 years." And then it was kind of like that 5-year point. That's when Justin and I met. And, well, we had met already, but that's when we started dating. And like, it was just kind of like, this isn't fulfilling us. And I had the luxury of being able to use company resources. The way that I worked is that tags would come into our queue and then I would go. So like a firefighter, right? So the other times of the day, we didn't really have long-term projects. That's not what our role was. So the other times of the day when we didn't have a tag to do, we just had to find something to do. Keep yourself busy, right? Corporate world, you're not swimming outside your lane. You're not trying to help other people.
Right.
You're
Do
doing your job and you're at your desk when we need you to be there. And so I was able to watch videos. We watched a lot of farming videos. And then there's kind of a little backstory of why we even, wanted to get into the farming aspect of it. But basically just got to focus my attention on doing this job and thinking about what I truly was put on this earth for. Because I sat there and I knew it wasn't that. And I had the best job you could have coming out of college. I had a hands-on job. I was on the airplane every single day. A lot of the folks I graduated with were sitting behind a desk doing Excel sheets for the first 5 years of their career, right? As engineers, that's kind of like, you're either like on the job and you're doing it, or you're doing data collection as a new, as like a new employee. So I had the best job you could have for my personality out of college. And it just wasn't fulfilling at all. There was moments, right? It was like, we would get on those highs. We saved the company a bunch of money. We got the airplane fixed. We figured out a way, but it was over in a moment. Right. And not that I need to like live on those adrenaline rushes, but it just wasn't satisfying.
Did you find that it was just kind of serving its purpose? Like you would show up 9 to 5 or whatever your hours were, and it was providing the paycheck that was that check mark in your life.
You got it. Yeah. And it wasn't until we started making that money and I realized like, that's not what it's about, right? Like, this just is not what it's about.
I'll tell you that a time in my life when I was making the most money I've ever made, I was legitimately the most miserable I've ever been.
I always want to like preach that, but then I also feel like I can't, because I feel like other people that haven't made that kind of money are like, well, you can say that because you've done it. And
Right.
I'm like, I hear you, right? Like, I hear you. And I don't know how to take that part out of my life to be like, I'm a broke farmer now. Like, our margins are the tightest they'll ever be. And I am more fulfilled now than I can even like articulate. My life, the hours in my day, if I could go to 48 hours just to live life more in a day, not even like to get more done, but just to enjoy this life even more in a day. Like, that's where we're at. Where before it was like, what time is it? Let's get done
Is
with
it
this
time
day.
to go?
And like, is it, I just got here, it's time to go kind of thing. So
you just gave us a sneak peek of where you are now. So what was the trigger that got you out of mechanical engineering? And I'm assuming that's maybe the first shift.
Yeah. So Justin and I decided to get married. We decided to elope to New Zealand, which was magical. And that's kind of where we realized, like, the way that Boeing works is they are a production facility. So they don't want to shut down for every Monday holiday and every bank holiday and all those things. So they kind of like group it all into one over Christmas break. We would get like 14 days off or 10 days off or something like that. So Justin and I would like save up all of our vacation and we would hook on to either end of that so we could take these like epic road trips or whatever and just be gone for like 3 weeks. And so we did that for our elopement. We went to New Zealand and we rented a little van, and for 30 days we traveled from the top of the North Island to the bottom of the South Island and back again. And we both in that moment were like, we don't need anything else than this. Like this van, this life, we had everything we needed. It was so funny because we would like lay down to watch a movie and I'm like, where's the lip balm? And it's like, oh, I can reach it right here. And it was like, everything was, it was enough. Right. And I'm like, this would set us free, like to not have overhead, to not have a mortgage payment, to not have these things. Right. And so that's like the wheels started turning, and we had kind of like just prior to that, we had like a 5-year plan, right? Like, let's save up a bunch of money and we'll, just work for the next 5 years. And then we'll buy a dream farm, right? We'll buy a piece of property where we can, raise our own food and do all that. And so once we did the New Zealand trip, it was like, well, let's move this up. Like, let's say this is like a 3-year plan. And my husband was like, he's 6'4", and he's like, I'm good with all of it. I just need a little bit of headroom, right? Because we're just in this like little van and he's just like Gumby getting in and out of it. And I'm like, okay, we can do that. And so we came back from New Zealand. We collected all of our mail, and we had already kind of gone into the process of going to buy a farm. And then we realized like, oh, we need a lot of down payment or whatever. Like, if the more down payment we come with, the less it's going to be. The PMI, the adult conversation started happening, and we put it all on the back burner. Like, okay, never mind. We'll wait. And so we had worked with the realtor. So we collected all of our mail. This is quite literally the day that we got back. And there was a card from her. And she said, hey guys, I know that you're holding off. I know that you have a little ways out, but the inventory for your type of house is really low. And if you're ready to start having the conversation again, then let's have the conversation again. So I told my husband. And so you have to understand something about my husband and I. We are polar opposite people. He is detail oriented. If he cannot see it, he is not interested in how, like, he's like, if it's not right here, then I need a lot of details before I make a decision. And I am head in the clouds. Anything can happen. Dreamer. Until it starts to, then I get nervous. Then I'm like, ooh, did I manifest this? What am I doing? Right. And so he was like, we're not ready. I'm like, I beg to differ on that, right. So I sent a note back to her anyway, because we have this saying of like, my boss at Boeing kind of coined it of like, you have nothing to lose, right? We can try this, we can throw the Hail Mary, and if it doesn't work, then our life just continues to move forward the same way it was going to. We don't have to pay her money. We don't have to do anything but respond. And that's it. Have a conversation about it. And so I sent her a note back, and then I asked Justin, I said, okay, how much money would you want in the bank for us to go? Like, if she comes back and it comes within that number, what is your number? Right.
Right.
So he had a number in his head. I made contact with her. She writes back, and she was within like her anticipation of what we would make on the house was within like $2,000 of that. And he in his mind, he's like, there's no way it's going to come close to this. So when she came back and said that, I was like, it's go time. So our 5-year dream went to a 3-year dream, went to 6 months. By the time we got back from our elopement in New Zealand, we sold everything, bought an RV, downsized to the RV. I was 5 months pregnant with our first daughter, and we were there 6 months. We got back in January. By July 4th, we were living full time in our RV. So that was a big one. That was a big one on the journey, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, you left everything you kind of knew for the unknown.
I will clarify, I still worked at Boeing. So Justin quit in June before we downsized to the RV, just because we were like, okay, we need your time to be able to like get rid of our stuff, get the RV ready. He's the researcher, and he's the one that he knew we were going to live in off-grid situations on farms and stuff like that. And so he quit in June. And then the plan was to be on a host farm until our daughter was born. I would take maternity leave, and then we would go and travel the country. And so yeah, so that's kind of I just want to put that out there too. Like, I did still keep my job, which
Okay.
there were some cool things that happened after that, but it wasn't until my daughter was, after she was born, even, there ended up being like a voluntary layoff opportunity, and my bosses asked me to come back from maternity leave just because they're like, we know you're leaving, so why don't you save another younger person's job that ultimately would get laid off, because I had higher retention, right? And so I'm
Right.
like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, so through all of those series of events, we were officially jobless, you could say, as far as corporate world job. I think my daughter was, oh gosh, like maybe 6 months old or something like that.
It's
Yeah.
funny, and I know you listened to my friend Shauna in episode 2, and her life shift was triggered by a piece of mail, and it seems
Yes.
that
Her whole conversation, I was just like, I love her, the baker, like, I was like, we need to meet. There's a lot there.
yeah, yeah. It's funny that it's something that, like a piece of mail, literally kickstarted that or changed that 5-year plan that you probably had all detailed out, because Justin probably had everything laid out, right?
He had a lot of questions. Yeah.
And that mail piece was like, here's a universe stepping in to kind of
Yeah,
make
and
these
he
things
even
happen
was
for you.
like, "No, don't contact her. We're not ready." And I'm like, "Well, I beg to differ, and let's just see where this goes." And we actually have learned a really cool part of the evolution of our marriage and our relationship is that we have learned how to communicate that way. We have learned how to, like, because I would get discouraged, right? I would say, let's talk about this, let's do this, and I'm like 100 miles down the road, living in this like moment, and he's like, I don't understand, like, and then he was just start asking questions that I didn't have the answer to yet. I'm like, no, 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 like, this is just like, let's just think about it. So now I come at him with dream a little dream is what I approach him with. And he immediately disengages. Like, he knows that this is not a conversation where we need to figure anything out. This is just
Right.
like, what if this happened? What if this got worked out? And so for the last, he'll even come at me now with like dream a
Really?
little dream. I'm like, whoa, cowboy, you are like, he's like, well, anything could happen, right? I'm like, okay, yeah, I did this to myself.
Well, I think that's an interesting place to go, is maybe talk about, so you're on the RV now, you're living on a host farm. What was the next dream a little dream?
Yeah. So our plan was basically kind of twofold. We knew we couldn't quit our corporate jobs and stay in Washington and ultimately buy a farm in Washington. We didn't think that we could do
Right.
that because it's a very expensive cost of living here. So we're like, let's go. And also, we haven't seen the rest of the country in a way, like Montana and like all these places where you've seen farmland or know about farmers that live there. We'd never been able to immerse ourselves in those places because it was a vacation or a weekend getaway or whatever, right? So we're like, we have the freedom to go see the country on our terms. Go to host farms. There's these really cool organizations, one of which is called WOOF, Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, where it's an entire database. It's membership paid, but it's an entire database of farms that are looking for help in some capacity, either one day, 1 week, 6 months, 2 years, like anything that you could think of, right?
Is it kind of like a barter system?
Right. So you're working,
Okay.
and then they have like, you can either stay on farm or you can have your RV or you can tent camp or whatever. Like, it can be very rustic or not. And so we had it all kind of mapped out. Like, we would use Woof as an opportunity to go to these places and meet other farmers and see what other farmers were doing. Because that was another huge piece of our puzzle, is that we had so many passions that had developed over the last years before we took this leap, right? It was roughly, yeah. So I had my autoimmune flare, and then that's what kind of triggered, like, we started making all of our food from scratch and sourcing from local farmers. And that was the domino, right? And so we're like, well, we can't raise the animals and make all the food, and like we need to go fine tune our passion. Like, do we want to brew beer? Do we want to, you know, break down animals and make bacon? Do we like, what do we want to do? There's no, and in the back of my mind, always like, we can do it all. We can grow it, we can process it, we can make value added products, because that's what we were passionate about. We are so passionate about sharing how amazing simple food is on its own without anything else, right? The community that comes from that, the story that comes from that. And so we set out like, okay, let's go figure out how we're going to make our own business out of this. Let's go see what other people are doing. Let's go learn from others. Cause that was kind of one of the things that we saw a lot of our farmer people that we had come in contact with, was just like, they were in it. Once you're in it, you're like in it. And you're like, how am I making money? How are we getting this farm up and going? And there's no mental space to be able to really like dream what that looks like. You're just in it. You've got animals, you got things counting on you. So yeah, so that was our plan. So we ended up delaying our trip for a year because the farmers that we were apprenticing with got pregnant, and they were about to have their daughter right in the midst of their busiest season. So they asked us to stay on. So we lived in an RV park and work with them, and then delayed about a year. So instead of like taking months at each spot around the country, we had one place in North Carolina. So we wolf farmed, we met people along the way, just one night stays, which was also cool because like, even though we stayed a short time, we were able to help in some capacity at every place that we stopped at. And it was
That's awesome.
Just an incredible trip. So then we went to North Carolina, and that was, if you asked us when we left Washington, well, what's next after North Carolina? Well, you said nothing. That's the next it. And we don't know how long we'll be there. And yeah, so I can talk about how those twists and turns led us a different way, if you like.
I mean, I think a big part of your journey and your story is this dream a little dream, or however you cited it, because I honestly think that that's why your life has taken these twists and turns from an outsider's perspective, because I've been watching social media and like, what's next? You know, like, when is the next blog being posted? When is the next email news? Like, where are they going now? So yeah, I mean, share a little bit about these twists and turns and kind of how your life brought you here where you are now.
Yeah, to our dreams coming true. So we hit North Carolina, and we had talked with this family that they're doing everything we want to do. We want to learn these things for the year, because we were originally supposed to go there, you know, and then we stayed in Washington another year. And so we felt like we knew them, and, you know, in a way. And then we got there and we're like, oh, wow, like there's a lot going on here that does not resonate with us. There was some drinking issues, there were some things going on, and we were like, okay, this is not the environment that we're interested in being in. And there was kind of this like blow up situation, and we're like, we're out of here.
When was this?
This was, my daughter had just turned a year, so she's 5. So this was 4 years ago. Yeah. And so kind of always at the top of our minds when we would get in later, you know, as these things kind of unfolded, was like, we didn't quit our corporate jobs. We didn't make ourselves completely uncomfortable to then be put in a position that did not serve our family and our life, right? Like, that's not, you work a corporate job and you do things you don't want to do because it's serving you in that moment. But we got away from that. It was like, things now need to serve us and our destiny, right? Like, what is the next thing for our family? And it's not staying in places that are unhealthy in some capacity. So we overnight left. They knew we were leaving, but it was very drastic. We were only there 6 weeks. So from this is the next thing and we don't have anything next, 6 weeks, right? And so
because you were in your mind, it was North Carolina or bust.
Not that we thought we would live there, but we knew we would. We thought we were going to be there for a couple of years, learning from these folks, right? So it's like, you don't plan anything when you think you're going to be somewhere for a couple of years. So it was 6 weeks, and then another kind of mantra we have in our family is just take the next right step. So what is the next thing we can do? What is the next possible step we can make? And so that looked like it was winterish time, and my family was 12, 14 hours away. My brother had a huge driveway and a RV hookup. And so we went to Florida. Florida was so good to us. I get angry every time I go to Florida because it's so hot every time I go to Florida. And this winter was magic. And we always joke, like, it's because we drove into the state with Washington plates that, like, we had to have a nice winter, right? So we
Thank you for
stayed
that one.
there. Oh, you're welcome. That was the winter of. So we stayed there, and I ended up carving out bookkeeping work with my mom. My mom is like a lifetime bookkeeper, and she was doing all the file folders. And this was kind of like, I feel, at the kind of height of get everything online, So I'd walk into her office and she's got files everywhere. I'm like, Mom, it's time. Like, let's get you online. She wanted to travel. So we basically scanned, like, I spent the whole winter with her scanning paperwork and making sure that all her files were in order, and basically carved out this remote position for me to be able to help her. She also needed help, but I knew I wasn't
Right.
staying in Florida. So that gave us the opportunity to be with family and then carve out this work. And so we got a tornado warning on our phone in May. My husband was like, it's time to go now. We live in an RV. We're not interested in being in Florida. And then, of course, it started warming up.
Right. Yeah. By May.
And yeah. And so we left. And the next stop was a friend's place in Kentucky. And I had a couple different avenues where I would look for farm work, or in some capacity, some work for trade where we could live there. And one of them that popped up was this farm in East Tennessee that was a rental opportunity. And so I tried to pitch the owner like a work for trade instead. Cause I was like, I just carved out this remote position. We're living off of our savings. Like, we're not ready to take on a rental payment. We don't even have a business, And so I tried to pitch him like, we'll live in our trailer. We'll rent out your farmhouse. We'll grow food for all of us. And he didn't go for it. He was like, I really need the rent money. I don't want to have that kind of relationship. And we're like, okay. So we went and checked it out. Then we went up to our friends in Kentucky, where there was kind of an opportunity to farm there too. And then we weighed out the pros and the cons, and we were like, let's just try it. Let's just do it. Right. I don't think we would have had the confidence to do it had I not carved out that remote work, which is all arbitrary. Now that I look back at all of it, I'm just like, at the things that we hold on to, the things that we arbitrarily, like the number Justin had for us, like the amount of money in the bank, the number he had in his mind, it's so arbitrary because it meant nothing. Like, we didn't know how much we were going to spend. We didn't, like, what was that number? It was a number that just was on his mind, right? And so we hang on to these really arbitrary things. And sometimes I think that stops us from,
Oh, for sure.
from going for it. But we're at the other end of that now, where we go for it a lot now. And I loved hearing the other folks you interviewed, because, and you mentioned it in your last in the fourth one, where you brought that correlation together of like all the people that you've interviewed so far have this mentality that they're going for it now. They have the confidence in themselves to go for it now because they were at the bottom, rock bottom. And they said, I'm not going to stay here, but what does that look like? Right. And honestly, I don't even know that was our rock bottom yet, like leaving.
That was the farm where you really started to establish the company though, right?
Yes.
That rental space. You were there for a while.
We were there for 2 years. We established a farm and retreat business. And then I went to a small business academy with a woman named Mary Heffernan, and her farm is Five Mary's Farm out in Fort Jones, California. But she is basically like passionate about sharing how she does her business model with other farmers and ranchers, because there's not enough of us, right? There's not enough of us to feed the country. There's not enough of us to, like really share our stories. And that's something that she kind of set the bar on. And we had X amount of dollars because it's an arbitrary number. I don't even know now, but okay, this is the last of this part of our savings. Like we still had our retirement funds, but it's like if we're going to make it, this is the woman that we need to learn from. Because what she was doing was she was shipping her meat products all over the country. And so Justin and I always had the vision that we did not want to do farmers markets. We did not want to leave the farm. We saw what that did to farm families. We saw the extra stressors, and not that it's not, we've done a couple and it's very uplifting and cup filling to go talk to people that are passionate about supporting the local community. But that's not how our family vision was. We wanted to be on the farm with our family. And so she was shipping her food products all over the country. We were in Podunky, East Tennessee, where nobody was driving to the farm to pay $10 for a loaf of bread. Not nobody. We actually did carve out a very beautiful local community that supported us, but not enough to pay our bills for sure. That was how the sourdough micro bakery business was born. And you were the first person to be in those first 14 boxes when we were vacuum sealing our bread products and squeezing the life out of like all of the, so many of the pictures that we look at, we're like, oh, we've come so far, but we also still have a lot to learn, you know?
I vividly remember your stories talking about the local post office though, because didn't have very limited hours and very limited staffing.
1 to 3. Yes. The funniest part about it was that there were like 3 local post offices. So we had like the schedule for all 3 of them. And it was just like, God knew we needed to ship our products. He was just like, but I'm giving you small windows that you have to work in, you know? Yeah. So that was
those labels printed.
Oh my gosh, so many labels. I finally got my office all set up here and at our new farm, and so I had all my labels out yesterday. But yeah, so we carved out this nationwide shipping business of customers that support us all over the country, and that was incredible. When you, I think you said her name was Shannon, right? The baker, when she started talking about people. Shauna, sorry, coming out to support her, that first event, that first like sold 700 cupcakes. Like, every time people would show up for us, and I don't know if it's because you're crafting it or you're making it with your own hands or you're just sharing like a very vulnerable part of yourself, right? When you invite people in to eat with you, that's vulnerable. Like you got to be good friends to have somebody in your house or, you know, and we've kind of moved past that where we're just like, if you want to know about what we're doing and you want to break bread with us, we are here for that, because the conversations that happen and the ideas that come from just talking to other people with a like-minded attitude, or even not, like sometimes those are the growing moments too, when you talk to people that don't agree with you or don't like see eye to eye on what you're doing. And it's like, okay, well, let's share both sides of the story. Right. So we carved out this nationwide shipping business so we could take that anywhere. And then the lease was ending and we had an opportunity to collaborate with another farm, and we saw it as an opportunity to remove the taking care of the animals aspect and really focus on our micro kitchen business at this point, because now it was bigger than the sourdough bakery and all of that. And we thought that's what the next right step was. And then, so we packed everything up, all of our kitchen equipment, we shut down our business, we stopped making income, and we went over and started collaborating with another farm in Middle Tennessee and built out this trailer, basically like a concession trailer that suited our business,
right?
So that we could be up and running. And then
a micro kitchen.
After years of getting ripped off by big wireless providers, there's finally a better option. Mint Mobile is the affordable premium wireless service that you buy online, starting at just $15 a month. By cutting out retail stores, Mint Mobile got rid of the crazy overhead costs so that you could score some sweet savings every month. To get your new wireless phone plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/save. That's mintmobile.com/save.
A micro kitchen. And so that was April. I guess that would have been last year, maybe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was last year. April was when it was finally built and we could start working again. And we just didn't see eye to eye. There was some control things going on there that we were like, we're our own business, you're your own business, like this isn't going to work. And in similar fashion to the North Carolina farm, when it was time to go, it was time to go. It was made clear
Right.
that
You
this
just
is
knew.
not going to go right. And we didn't own the concession trailer, so our business was shut down again after we had just started to get up and running. And what was the next right step? We went back to East Tennessee, and the farmer that we shared land with on when we did our rental farm, he was 5 minutes up the road from that rental farm, and he open arms. His family, he has a 600-acre farm, plenty of room. They had just like demoed their mobile, so there was electric hookups, there was sewage, everything for us to be comfortable. And so we went back over there to regroup and figure out what was next. And that was where all the magic happened. We had no cell service, which was terrifying because it was like, how am I going to do the research? Like, I'm like a night owl. Like, I get research done. My husband's sleeping. He wakes up in the morning. I'm like, babe, I got a plan, right? I couldn't do anything. It was
Yeah.
like it was so paralyzing. And it was like, okay, well, we need to get service out here. And so the only thing we could do was go to the library. And that was about a 45-minute round trip. And so we would go to the library, we tried to get some Wi-Fi out there. It just kept not working out. And then there was, this moment where I'm like, we're supposed to just be still. Like, he was charging us pennies for rent. It was like ridiculous how kind and generous this family is. And it was a moment to just be like, our overhead is really low right now. Let's figure this out. What's the next thing we want to do? Well, the first thing we started talking about was how to make money. That was, of course, right? Our business is shut down. We are not making income. Our savings is getting drained. Like, we got to make money, right? And we basically had always had this heart to do like consulting because of all the things that we had learned. So now we have like how to build a business that you can ship products. And so many people ask us questions about that. And I was really passionate about helping, and then building a farm and retreat. So then our vision of, through these years of being on the farm, renting the farm and all of that, our vision of how to make it all work became more clear, right? Multiple income streams. We have, as a farm, we have to have multiple income streams because what happened? COVID happened. And you asked one of your interviewees about, like I don't know. I feel like a lot of the folks so far, their pivotal moments have been in COVID, right? Of like, whoa. So we had gone to visit the Middle Tennessee farmers before we decided to leave. And then COVID, like on our way back, is when all the shutdowns started happening. So we get back to the farm, and we come back to the farm, and we have eggs all over our table. We have a walk-in freezer that was packed full of meat. We made our own bread products. And there was that moment where we were like, all of it came to this. All the times that people were like, you're going to quit your corporate job for what? You're going to do this security, what? That, and we walked back onto our farm filled with the things that nobody could get their hands on. And we're like, oh my gosh, it all makes sense right now. All the hard work we put in, all the against the grain, all the friction, we have arrived, right? We have everything we need. Our sourdough micro bakery, because we ship nationwide, just absolutely catapulted because we had people that waited for bread products for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. They would pay for it, and it would take us months to turn around. So we're like, okay, we have all these income streams. We understand that's how we make this work because our retreat business was shut down. Nobody's traveling, but our sourdough micro bakery business is booming, right? And so now that we have these different income streams, like these are the 3 pillars, like value-added food, raising the farm animals, and getting people to the farm. Because once you get them to the farm, then they can support you that way, right? So we're either coming to your doorstep or you're coming to the farm.
These thoughts were coming when you were kind of in that be still moment?
Yeah. So the thoughts of like, we can go teach other people now. We can travel. We have our RV. We can travel. Let's go to other people's farms. Well, there were some roadblocks there. We had upsized to a 5th wheel, but we couldn't pull it with our truck. And then what happened? The truck industry turned over on its end, couldn't get chips, all this stuff. And we're like, oh, okay, what are we like? This is a good plan. We can go travel again. We love to travel. it's not a good plan when you are about to sell your truck but don't have another truck. And so there was a moment I went to the library and we had a bunch of messages about our truck that my husband was going to entertain offers. And I called him and I was like, don't make any decisions yet. Like, let's just wait till I get home and let's talk. I have something I want to discuss with you. So I got back and I was like, I don't think this is what we're going to do. Like, what do we really want? Do we want to go travel? Do we want to go consult? We could do that. We could make money. We could make connections. We could see people that we can't wait to see, that we're so excited to connect with in person, that we've known all these years now. But what do we really want for our family? And both of us were like, we want to be on a farm. We're done.
Yeah.
We have 2 kids now. COVID, in the midst of all that, we had our second daughter, and we know the toll it takes to travel with kids. It's a beautiful, amazing. I would sell it to anybody that's ready to do it, but we were ready for the committed finality of being on our own farm. And so we had upsized to my brother's fifth wheel. He was willing to trade us back to go back into our trailer. We went back to Florida and we traded back our trailers. We packed up all our stuff. And then within that time, we found a farm in Washington, and we were like, there's no way we can afford this. We don't even know how this could happen. Dream a little dream, like all this stuff.
Right, because everything was shut down, right? You weren't able to kind of create your products or any of that?
Exactly. So that was the biggest thing, is that my brother was kind enough. He's like, I'll help you with the down payment. I'll help you with the down payment. I'll be, a co-signer, whatever you need me to do. I'm willing to help you with that. And it wasn't enough. I was like, oh, what do you mean? Like, we have nationwide business. As soon as we're up and running, here's what our monies look like. Right. And I'm trying to sell that to the farm credit folks. And they're like, oh, we need at least 18 months of like actual year income. The other aspect of that is that we were going to buy a farm that already has an established farm business on it. And so right. I was like, so that income comes into play, but they just couldn't work with us. And I did a Hail Mary, and we had connected with the farm owners of this property, and we were able to come and talk to them while we were visiting and share our dreams and desires for our family and all of that, and got to know them. And so I sent them an email and I was like, would you consider doing owner financing? We got turned down. So she came back and we kind of discussed some terms, and she wanted to see a couple, paperwork from our business and stuff like that. And the cool thing was we had established ourselves on social media. And you know how I am on social media. My Instagram is full with very personal, like our whole heart is on that, on our IG page, because, when we learn from Mary, she's like, people need to know your stories. Like you guys need, like, I feel like her small business academy, like it's just rich with personal stories of how they got to these places. And so we shared that. We shared the behind the scenes. We grew an incredible following of people that support us and deeply supported us, wanted to, knew our daughter's names, like things like that, like very personal. And so I gave her all that information. I'm like, here is our IG account. Here's our website I built. Here's what we've done. Here's our P&Ls from the last years when we were up and running. And they went for it. And no credit. I'd sent her like our credit score, we have those mappers or whatever. And I was like, I'm open book, like whatever you want to see.
Because you wanted this to happen.
Yeah. I kind of jokingly now of like, don't tell me that it can't happen, because we got a farm that was almost $700,000 with no, like at the end of our savings, on paper, right. We didn't get a credit check. We didn't have to go through a financial institution. Like we just had to ask. We just had to open up the conversation. And had she said no, I wouldn't have given up. There's a few other avenues when it comes to like new farm and stuff like that. But they said yes. They saw that opportunity to make a little bit more money on their investment. And it was a business transaction. It was very emotional and personal for us because we're like, is this happening? but ultimately we are business owners.
I'm sure for them too.
Exactly. They were really adamant about finding people that were going to farm the land, because we live in an area now. We live in Sequim, Washington, where a lot of developers are coming, and this is a pretty iconic like farm
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of Sequim. And a lot of the community were like, "Oh, we hope you're going to keep it a farm." And so they knew we were all in. We had 2 kids. We were in a travel trailer. Like, they knew we were going to do everything it took to make sure that we are successful here. And they went for it. And here we are, living at the very beginning of the rest of our our lives.
Well, and you know what? We started out this conversation saying how, everyone's sharing their stories, but there's so many like common things. And
Mhm.
what we find in all of these journeys that people are sharing is that, unfortunately and fortunately, you kind of have to go through all of those twists and turns.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Because you wouldn't be able to, I don't think, without all those bumps and the things that you had to challenge yourselves, and even the be still moments, you wouldn't be who you are, what you're doing on this new space. And I
Oh,
was
for
thinking, when
sure.
you were talking about creating your products and kind of having that initial, like, are people going to like it? And those elements of it. Now, when I see you sharing on social media, because you do a wonderful job there, sharing these new products and
Mhm.
saying, look, we love these,
Yeah.
we're not there yet, but I want you to taste it. I want you to see where I'm going with it.
Mhm.
I love it. There's so much more confidence in what you're creating. And I think it's
Yeah.
because of the entire journey that you went on, and kind of dreaming these little dreams along the way and taking the next right step.
Mhm.
Here you are.
Yeah. Yes. And
You're
we,
doing it.
you've talked about the confidence that you've seen in your other interviews, of like that change, that switch
Mm-hmm.
in your personality. And like, I feel like being here and having this actually happen, to actually have, I don't know, again, arrived, right? At like
Mm-hmm.
what, and this is beyond our wildest dreams. Like this farm,
Yeah.
this opportunity, like we dreamed for some of this stuff, but we didn't even know. We didn't even know how good it could be, right? Like it is unbelievable. And we're just getting started. We're coming out of winter on a farm that has a 9-year-old established orchard. Like things are about to get wild. And so just to speak those things out loud, just to say what you want, right? Like in that stillness in Tennessee, in East Tennessee again, in that moment where we didn't have distractions, we couldn't
Yeah.
just get on our phone. We had to talk to each other. My husband and I had spent the last 5 years of our life as a full-time family. So yeah, of course, we're talking to each other. We are with each other every single moment of every single day, aside from 30-minute jaunts to town, right? But we had to just be quiet and listen to what we wanted and talk to each other, like deeply talk to each other about what we wanted. We started reading the Bible, like all these things that would not have happened had we had our phones in front of us and they could work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to just take a step away from that and to just like straight up ask him, what do you really want though? Let's put money out of the question here. Let's stop talking about making money. Okay. And let's talk about what we really, really want to do right now in this moment. And that was our biggest dream, a little dream. That was our biggest like growing moment in that, of like, we can distract ourselves all day with how to make money in the next season of our life. And it's not serving us. Like we left our corporate jobs because the money wasn't serving us, but it's societally is just like, I have to make money. I have to make money.
Yep.
Right. Like, but and not to say that I am growing in that now too. On a farm, we have big expenses now. And then we chose to shut down on Sundays. The farm stand's been open for 7 days a week for the last 8 years. And we decided to shake it up, and we're like, we need a rest day. We know what that looks like for farmers and our family, like our children. Like we're in this season of life where they are so desperately needy, right? And like we need to honor that. We asked for this life. We chose this life, and we need to now step into that and what that looks like. And so Yeah, having the conversations, talking about it, getting personal, being still, being quiet, even music, just be still and think about what you really want in life. Really want, really, really.
I think that a lot of people, as rough as the last couple years have been for the world and for,
Hmm.
people in general, there are a lot of positives that have come out of it because people have been forced, whether they wanted to or not,
To get uncomfortable.
to get uncomfortable, to stop, to just be and
Yeah.
think. And so, one of the conversations in one of the episodes, we talked about it as the Great Awakening,
Hmm.
in which so many people had the opportunity to go, no, this is not serving me.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm doing now is just not where I want to go. And I'm going to make some changes. And so I think it's interesting because you had that moment. Maybe it was a little bit before, or was it during that be still moment?
The Be Still
Was that
was,
during COVID?
no, no, that was after. It was, I don't know, how long did COVID, like, it's been years, right? Like at this
Yeah.
point, it's like,
Who
what
knows
day is it?
what year
Yeah,
it
what's
is? Yeah.
happening? But that was East Tennessee. So we made our way back over to Washington December, like November-ish. And so
Yeah.
that was whatever it love last year. So
So many people, I think we needed that. I think, not in a sad way, but I think a lot of people just need those moments in which they cannot use the distractions to take them away and to sit in what might be uncomfortable and really face and figure out what do you want. And we should be so lucky to have those moments, right? As tough as they are.
even like just knowing that you don't have to have it all figured out. I think a lot of times, especially when we're going to try to quit a job or, do something really drastic, we're like, well, we need to have these things kind of planned. And I think what COVID showed everybody is like, there's no plan. Like I mean,
Right.
there's a greater plan for your life, but there's
Right.
nothing you can plan that cannot be completely obstructed. Right. And just to really like submit. I feel like
Hmm.
that's been my biggest word for probably the last year at least, is
Hmm.
just submit to the bigger plan. Submit to, what's happening right now, whether that looks like what you thought it would or not. Usually it's not what you thought it was going to look like. And just allow those things to happen, and
Hmm.
and almost try to remove yourself from being so involved and look at it and just go, okay, this is happening. What am I learning from this? What do I think I'm supposed to do next? And let that quiet seep in, and let those
Yeah.
moments where you're like, what do I really want in this moment? What do I want the outcome of this to be? And then continue to walk through those open doors, because that is what we have done. We now take a very passive, like passive and aggressive, right? We're like, here's our big dreams. Let's manifest them. Let's speak them out loud. And then let's just take a step back and see how this actually is going to unfold. Let's just
Yeah.
see what doors open, who we're supposed to meet, even stuff as little as like when my kids are taking 12 years to get into the car and we have somewhere to be at a certain time, right? We don't really live our life with like a schedule other than like we wake up, we take care of the animals, we feed ourselves, that kind of thing. Like time is like lost on us. But we do have those occasional times where we have to be somewhere at a certain time. And so even those moments where they're taking their sweet time or we're going to be late, I sit and I think, and I'm like, who am I supposed to meet as a result of being late? Who am I going to cross paths with because I wasn't where I was supposed to be when that time was happening, right? And so I try to think about those things now where I'm like, I'm not late. I'm never late. You're never late. Things are happening as they're supposed to. And I think if we take a different approach of it, of like, who am I supposed to meet? What am I supposed to learn? What's going to be shown to me as a result of me being 5 minutes behind the schedule that I thought I was supposed to be on, and those little moments, those little micro moments that add up to you learning about something you didn't think you're going to learn about. Or I'm just very like aware now of those
Yeah.
moments, of those like I was supposed to meet this person and I would not have met this person had X, Y, or Z happened, you know?
Well, even those moments of, going to North Carolina, you were supposed to do that, right? That was part of your learning process. That whether it was toxic or not, it told you
Right.
what you didn't need in your life, and you made the decisions.
I was just going to say that. Though every single time that we were like, okay, this is done. It's time to move on. This is done. It was fine tuning of what we're willing to tolerate in our life, of things that we're willing to let be in our life. And then the more you fine tune that, the more that noise goes away, right? Those
Yeah.
outside influences that you're like, this isn't serving me. This isn't serving my family. I'm not the person that I want to be as a result of what I'm in right now. And you can change that. You can, like you have to, like, it just has to happen and it will happen.
And I think that's the good takeaway from your story, is not so much that your story to me is not really a story about someone that was in corporate America that wanted to become a farmer, which
Mm.
before we started talking, it really was, to be honest.
Right. Yeah.
But talking to you now, your journey is more about finding out who you guys are and who your family is and how you can cultivate the life that you know you want and that you deserve.
Right.
And the product or is this farming life that you've created,
Mhm.
right? But it's not really what I intended going in, which I think is so beautiful about these stories on the life
Yeah.
shift, is that, like, I really, honestly, I followed you on social media for 100 years now, and
You've been our
you put
biggest
your,
fan. You're just amazing. You're
I
such
love
a
it.
yeah.
It's, you're so good at your storytelling. And I came into this conversation with the perception of that was really like what I thought was this corporate to farm kind
Mhm.
of shift. And it's really, this is more of a personal humanity
Yeah.
changing story and not what you're actually doing, right?
Right. Yeah, it started out very selfish, right? The whole thing just started out very self-consumed, and I find now every time we make decisions, we think about how can that better serve our family? How can that better serve our community? How can that better progress God's will for our lives? Like, are we stepping into that, right? Are we really? And so now it's like a full circle. We've gone from just being very self led to very like service led. And every decision we make now is in some capacity, how can we serve other people with this? How can we serve our family better? How can we serve the folks that want to
I love
support
it.
us better? And it's humbling, and I'm emotional all the time. The fact that I got through this whole interview without crying, I did choke up a little bit there, but it's just like I am very vulnerable, and that's okay now. It was never okay before. It was always just like, oh, I got to protect everything, my feelings, my emotions, all this, and then of course our children bring that out of us. They are the walking beings of our emotions, and I give myself the space to be vulnerable and emotional, and my husband and my children, and that's all held at a very high, value in our family. And I think it's really brought us closer to service and things like that, of like how we can help cultivate these things for other people and share our story in some way that helps someone see that those things you're holding on to are arbitrary.
Yeah.
It doesn't, pick a number. I that comes to mind a lot. Pick a number. Pick a number that you would want in your bank account. Pick a number of how many months, and then just focus on that, because it's gonna give you a little more tunnel vision. It'll block out some noise. At least start there. Pick a number, and it could have nothing to do with nothing, but. And we've had quite a few of those arbitrary number moments where I'm just like, that was so arbitrary now. It meant nothing. But it was always the catalyst for change. So pick a number.
Well, my friend, I appreciate that you took this time to share your story. I know there's a lot more to your story, but hopefully people will join you on social media, which they can read about the links and whatnot in the show notes. So thank you for being a part of the Life Shift podcast.
Thank you, Matt. And I just wanted to say too, you've already shared a little, and I don't know if you'll cut this out or not, but you're going to get interviewed, and just to also be on the other end of social media and you're much more private than we are, but just to kind of like tease out those things in your life, those big moments in your life that have changed you. I've seen such a change in you over these last years, and it's been so cool. And the fact that we get to be friends through all of this and like root each other on and just see that personal growth, because that personal growth is magic, man. It is like, it's the hardest. Growing pains don't stop when you get into your 30s and 40s, man. I think they just get harder because you remember them. I tell my kids all the time, like, it's growing pains. You're not going to remember this. And I'm like, Jenna, you're exhausted from growing pains.
Yeah. I think when we go through all these different bumps in the road, though, it teaches us what really matters. And I think that's what your story is all about, is what really matters. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, friend.
I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift. Candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information about how you can support the Life Shift podcast, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com. See you next time.